a poor boy from a remote village in Sinaloa who dropped out after third grade and once sold oranges by the roadside, would later become the most notorious drug lord in the world, a man who escaped prison twice like a James Bond movie. Aren't you curious how his journey began? In the arid mountains of Sinaloa, a short, plain boy nicknamed El Chapo, the Shorty, carried within him an ambition far beyond the poor village. His father, a drunkard, powerless, living a useless life. His mother, Maria Consuelo, a hardworking woman, quietly bearing the whole family in sweat and blood. It was she who forged for El Chapo a steel will and the desire to escape the poverty that clung to him. From an early age, the boy was strangely different. While his friends played with pebbles and wooden guns, Chapo sat counting homemade paper bills, tying them into bundles like treasures. His eyes lit up in the darkness, his mouth muttering, "One day, I will be rich." But fate was not so easy. At the age of 11, when the path of schooling closed because of hunger, the boy stepped into a harsh world. At first, it was only selling oranges, selling bread on the village road. But then, the hand of destiny led him to the bright red poppy fields, where his father and other peasants quietly cut opium sap, that dark commodity bringing profits tens of times more than corn and beans. At that very moment, the line between honesty and sin disappeared. El Chapo did not only learn how to labor, he learned how to survive in a land where hunger, violence, and ambition always went hand in hand. And from a child selling goods with a fake chain to show off to the village, he gradually stepped into the underworld, where power and blood awaited. The turning point of El Chapo's life came when he set foot in the Guadalajara cartel under Miguel Ángel Félix Gallardo, the boss of bosses. Here, the young man learned dark secrets, how to bribe officials, use legal fronts to cover crimes, and most importantly, always attach himself to the strongest. Gallardo became the model Chapo admired, the one who opened the door that led him into the underworld. But destiny did not stop there. When Gallardo was arrested in 1989, the power structure of the cartel collapsed. In that vacuum of power, El Chapo rose as a bloodthirsty, intelligent, and ruthless man. He seized the opportunity, allied with Hector Palma, Ismael El Mayo Zambada, and the Beltran Leyva brothers, laying the foundation for the Sinaloa cartel, the most powerful drug organization in Mexico's history. El Chapo was no longer just a servant. He became El Rapido, the fastest transporter, thanks to the creation of cross-border tunnels where tons of cocaine flowed into the United States like a white flood. From an insignificant short man, he rose to the ranks of kingpins, holding in his hands power, blood, and money. The road ahead was bloodier than ever, but El Chapo had chosen it, and from here, Mexico's criminal world would never be the same again. After consolidating his power, El Chapo quickly faced his greatest enemy, the Tijuana cartel, the infamous Arellano Felix family. In the early 1990s, the war for territory broke out fiercely, turning the border cities into blazing battlefields. From Tijuana to Guadalajara, the sound of gunfire echoed like a declaration of war. El Chapo no longer hid in the shadows. He ordered the digging of sophisticated cross-border tunnels where tons of cocaine flowed into the United States. But his ambition to expand brought him into direct confrontation with the Arellano family. The climax was the massacre at Guadalajara Airport in 1993. When the Arellano gunmen attempted to assassinate El Chapo, they mistakenly riddled with bullets the car carrying Cardinal Juan Jesus Posadas Ocampo, one of Mexico's highest-ranking clergymen. The Cardinal's death shocked the entire nation, and for the first time, the name El Chapo became a symbol of blood and chaos. The Mexican government could not stand aside. A $5 million bounty was announced for anyone who could capture or kill El Chapo. Amid the turmoil, he tried to flee to Guatemala. But just weeks later, on June 9, 1993, Guatemalan troops surrounded his hideout. He was captured alive and handed over to Mexico. The day El Chapo was caught, many believed his empire would collapse. But they were wrong, because even behind bars, the short kingpin continued to run his drug network, bribing prison guards and living like a monarch in the shadows. Prison could not cage his ambition. It was merely a new stage for another, even more terrifying act. 8 years behind bars seemed to have buried El Chapo in the vortex of power. But in reality, he was only waiting for the destined moment. On January 19, 2001, as Mexico welcomed a new wave of change with President Vicente Fox, the short kingpin vanished from Puente Grande prison. No one knows if he slipped into a laundry cart or simply walked out through the gates thanks to bribed hands. But one thing was certain: it was an escape that shocked the world. That event not only humiliated the Mexican government, but also confirmed a terrifying truth. Chapo's money and power could bend the entire legal system. While hundreds of police launched a massive manhunt, he had already disappeared, shielded by convoys of corrupted police and soldiers. Back in Sinaloa, El Chapo was no longer a fugitive. He began rebuilding his empire, gathering his most loyal allies: Ismael El Mayo Zambada, Juan José El Azul Esparragosa, and the Beltran Leyva brothers. Together, they erected a vast alliance, the Federación de Sinaloa, the most powerful drug trafficking network Mexico had ever seen. But Chapo was not only after power, he craved revenge. His first target was Ramón Arellano Félix, the armed wing leader of the Tijuana cartel. In 2002, Ramón was ambushed by police and gunned down, ending part of the nightmare. Soon after, his brother Benjamin was also captured. The names that once forced El Chapo into hiding now fell one by one. From a fugitive, he transformed into an untouchable symbol, a ghost that Mexico both feared and respected. And from that moment, the drug war entered a new era, the era of El Chapo. The Sinaloa cartel under El Chapo was unlike any criminal organization before it. Instead of building a rigid pyramid of power, he created a horizontal alliance, where kingpins shared capital, trafficking routes, and political connections. This was not a single cartel, but a federación, a demonic alliance, operating like a giant machine, infiltrating every border. El Chapo was clever enough to know that true power did not lie in titles, but in the network. Allies like El Mayo Zambada, El Azul Esparragosa, or the Beltran Leyva brothers each held their own spheres of influence, but together they became an unstoppable force. Each possessed weapons, hitmen, connections with government and local police. When united, they resembled the long-reaching arms of a colossal monster. But what made the world tremble was not only military strength, but money. Cocaine from Colombia, heroin from Mexico's Golden Triangle, then methamphetamine and fentanyl, all flowed into the United States like a deadly white river. Every year, the Sinaloa network pocketed tens of billions of dollars. Cross-border tunnels became the lifeblood of the empire, where every month tons of goods silently slipped through, right under the feet of border guards. With immense profits, El Chapo built luxurious mansions, his own zoo with tigers, lions, and black panthers. Yet he still maintained the habit of hiding in modest houses, ready to vanish at any moment. For him, luxury was only a facade. Power and money were what fed his endless thirst. By this time, El Chapo was no longer just a kingpin. He was the living symbol of limitless ambition, the man who turned all of Mexico into a chessboard, where every dollar and every bullet bore his fingerprints. The Sinaloa Empire seemed invincible, but even within its closest ranks, cracks began to appear. In 2008, the alliance between El Chapo and the Beltran Leyva brothers collapsed after Alfredo Beltran Leyva was captured. His brother Arturo believed that Chapo himself had betrayed him, handing his sibling over to the government. That accusation ignited a bloody war, turning Sinaloa into a battlefield where corpses fell like rain each day. Violence spread from Culiacan to Acapulco, thousands of innocent civilians perishing unjustly. Former close allies now became sworn enemies. El Chapo still held the throne, but blood and betrayal had stained the path he walked. The higher he climbed, the lonelier he became, for the hands that once clasped his were now pointing guns at him. Yet, even standing in the middle of the storm, El Chapo maintained power through sophisticated tunnels and a network stretching across the Americas. He became an untouchable ghost, the one both the DEA and the Mexican military longed to bring down. But destiny never sleeps. In February 2014, at a seaside hotel in Mazatlan, El Chapo fell into the trap of the Mexican Marines. After years on the run, the short kingpin was finally captured for the second time. The scene played out like a dramatic film. Police storming in at night, surrounding the room where Chapo slept beside his lover. With no escape, he surrendered. All of Mexico was shaken. The international press erupted with headlines. The demon who had twice escaped prison had now fallen. But was prison strong enough to hold a man who once treated iron bars as a joke? That question left the whole world restless, for history had already proven, with El Chapo, no chain was ever permanent. The Altiplano prison, known as Mexico's impregnable fortress, was once believed to be the place that would hold El Chapo forever. But history once again proved that for him, chains were only a joke. On the night of July 11, 2015, security cameras recorded the short kingpin stepping into the shower stall of his cell, bending down and then vanishing. Beneath him lay a tunnel more than 1.5 kilometers long, dug straight from his cell to an abandoned house. Ventilation systems, lighting, even a motorcycle on rails, all so sophisticated it stunned the world. That escape was not only a slap in the face of the Mexican government, but it also turned El Chapo into a living legend, the man who twice defeated an entire nation. To the poor, he seemed like an immortal ghost. To his enemies, he was a nightmare without end. But this time, freedom did not last long. In January 2016, after an intense manhunt, Mexican Marines stormed a house in Los Mochis. Gunfire exploded, bullets blazed through the night. After a breathless firefight, El Chapo was captured alive for the third time. Mexico sighed in relief, the world cheered, while El Chapo, the man who once made an entire system tremble, sat silently in handcuffs. This time he knew, destiny had closed in. The nightmare called El Chapo had finally been stopped, or only paused. In January 2017, the skies over Mexico turned grim when El Chapo Guzmán, the man who had twice escaped prison and twice defied the government, was escorted by military helicopter and handed over to the United States. That night, Mexico seemed to breathe a sigh of relief, while the world was stunned. The demon of Sinaloa had finally fallen into the claws of justice. In New York, one of the greatest trials of the 21st century began. Security was tighter than ever, armored convoys for escort, helicopters circling the skies, and every eye fixed on the man who had spread death across an entire continent. Inside the courtroom, El Chapo was no longer the untouchable ghost, but a thin, silent man, his eyes still and dark like stagnant water. Yet the evidence against him thundered like hammers of judgment, the testimony of the Flores twins, recordings of cocaine deals, and witnesses who had once been his most loyal men. A horrifying picture emerged, hundreds of tons of drugs, billions of dollars laundered, and countless lives lost just to feed the thirst for power of the short kingpin. On sentencing day, the world held its breath. El Chapo rose and quietly looked at the judge. The verdict rang out, life imprisonment plus 30 years. No more escape routes, no more tunnels, only cold steel bars to bury a blood-stained legend. And yet, even as he was locked away in Florence ADX, America's black hole, the name El Chapo still haunted Mexico. The abandoned tunnels, the blood-soaked money, the successor cartels, all served as a reminder that even though one monster had fallen, the nightmare of narcotics had not ended. El Chapo has fallen, but his name has not died. In the dark alleys of Sinaloa, in the abandoned cross-border tunnels, people still whisper about him, like a ghost that never disappeared. The legacy he left behind was not wealth or power, but a Mexico drowning in blood and suspicion. Successor cartels like CJNG, Los Zetas, or the remnants of Sinaloa still spread violence, making every day in Mexico a day when innocent bodies fall. The vicious cycle of corruption, guns, and narcotics continues to turn, with no government strong enough to put an end to it. The poor of Sinaloa may remember El Chapo as the man who once brought clean water and houses to their villages, but the rest of the country and the world see him only as a symbol of cruelty, the one who turned Mexico into a battlefield and transformed human blood into money. In 2019, when hearing his life sentence, El Chapo claimed he had been mentally tortured, that justice had never existed for him. But the thousands of families who lost husbands, sons, fathers would say the opposite. Justice only came too late. Today, in the narrow cell of ADX Florence, the short kingpin is nothing more than a shadow. Yet the nightmare he unleashed still engulfs Mexico. And the final question lingers. When one El Chapo has fallen, how many more will rise to continue feeding the deadly white flood?